Hi, I'm Anthony, and welcome to Cybrary.it. Today in our lesson, we're going to be talking about power supplies and the different types of connectors that we'll find on power supplies. And I'm your local subject matter expert here for our A+ series. So when we're talking about a power supply, most commonly we're talking about the big box that we find inside our computer, which gives our computer power. Now, when we think about giving our computer power, it's less of an actual power source and more of a power converter. We don't just stand up our desktop and press the power button without connecting it to any power source and have it boot up. It needs that additional power source coming from our wall. However, in most of our countries, especially here in the United States, all of the power that we're having coming out of our wall supply is alternating current power, is AC. Our computers, most times, their different components require direct current, DC current. Now, that's what our power supply does. It allows us to take that alternating current, convert it to a direct current, and distribute it to the different points on our computer with our different connectors and the different wires. Now, a typical power supply, we'll commonly see this abbreviated PSU for power supply unit. As we said, converts AC to DC, and it's typically going to be, we're going to see at least 400 watt or larger. Watt being our measure of power, or greater. This is for our typical desktop. Our slimline desktops may use a 200 to 300 watt power supply. Our laptops may even use a little bit less, and the laptop power supplies and the way the laptop supplies powers is a bit more complicated and is a lot more specific to each individual laptop than our desktops. Now, when we're looking at getting a power supply, we can't just go and buy one power supply and use that same power supply in its standard configuration anywhere in the world. Different places in the world use different types of voltages coming out of their power source, coming out of the walls in homes or businesses. In the United States and in North America, so abbreviate North America, our common voltage that we're going to see coming out of the wall is going to be 110 to 120 volts, 60 hertz. This voltage is contrasted by Europe and Asia, which use the 220 to 240 volts and 50 hertz. You'll want to check out what your particular voltage and what your hertz coming out of the wall is in your location to make sure that you don't misuse the power supply and result in issues. Now, a lot of our modern power supplies will actually come with switches on the back of them that allow us to switch between these different voltages. So as you can see on the back of our power supply here, and this is a part which will be actually sticking out of the casing for our computer, has a red switch here. And on the red switch, we see indicated on this one, 115, and when we switch to the other, 230. When we're in North America, United States, we'll want to use that 115 setting, and Europe or Asia or anywhere that it uses a 220 or 240 volt, we'll want to switch that setting to the 230 setting. While we're back here, we'll also notice that we have a power switch here. This allows us an additional means of power control for our computer. If you're trying to turn on a computer and it's plugged into the wall and you're trying to press the power button and nothing's happening, you want to always check the back of that computer to make sure that if it does have a power supply switch, that power supply switch is turned off, because it can very easily, someone trying to get to some wires back there, or the computer gets shoved against the wall or the side of the desk that it's in, that switch gets turned off, it gets changed to a different position, and now the computer won't turn on even when we're pressing the power button. So we want to make sure that we're using the proper voltage, that our switch is turned on, and also that we pick our proper wattage for our units. Now, our wattage, again, is going to be the measure of power that our power supply is pushing out, and depending on the types of components, the type of motherboard, how many hard drives we're using, all of those different components on our computer require power supplied to them. So we want to make sure that we're picking the proper wattage, that we have enough power to our computer, that we can turn on our computer, get it running, and we're not straining our power supply. When we're looking at our power supply units, we'll notice that the cables that are coming out of them have a lot of different colors. red, greens, blacks, oranges, browns. All of these different colors mean different voltage numbers. In older model power supplies, the standard may be different, but some of the common colors that we'll see are going to be yellow, black, red, orange, and white. When we see a yellow, we'll commonly be seeing that as a plus 12 volt wire. Sometimes this may be a white in older models. It may be white or yellow interchangeably. We'll also be seeing black, which is our ground, red, which is going to be our 5 volts, orange, which is our plus 3.3 volt, and finally our white, when it's not used in our cases where we're representing our plus 12 volts, is actually going to sometimes mean a minus 5. Again, these are going to be some common colors that we'll see. It's good to know these when we're trying to determine what kind of voltage possibly a certain connector is putting out, or what type of voltage a certain fan is using. Some fans will have connector pins for plus 5 and a plus 3.3 volt, and when we're pushing out that fan at that plus 5 voltage, it'll spin loud. It'll give us too much of a. It'll be an additional fan, say we put in there. It's a colored fan, thought it may look nice inside the case, but we're getting a really loud fan spinning. It's becoming really loud and really obnoxious. So we can make sure that we choose maybe a lesser voltage fan, or use a different type of a voltage adapter to use instead our plus 3.3 voltage. Maybe you get a little bit less of that fan rotation on that extra fan that we put in there, so it's not quite as loud. But we don't want to go modifying our system fans, the fans that keep our CPU cold, unless we have a good understanding of the cooling factors inside of our cases, because if our computer overheats, it's going to shut down and it's not going to have our optimum performance.